No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you. I hope everyone has had a great Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, that you are enjoying the holiday season in peace, in love, in warmth, that you are having a very good holiday season. We have a lot of things that we want to go over today, and it looks like yet again, we have been completely shut down by Facebook. For those who are trying to find it on Facebook, we apologize. We have yet to receive any notification from Facebook on why they have shut us down after about 10 years of doing this live. We have no notification. So we have only to believe it is censorship. But we're going to get past that. And for those who have not been here before, the program is a long-form political commentary channel. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m., just as we are right now, Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, the public, talking with you about what you believe are the issues of the day, what are the answers, solutions, what are the problems, everything that's on your mind, because far too often, you're ignored by most in media. Many politicians are talking down to you, telling you what you should believe, rather than listening to you. We like to do it the other way around. So, with that said, we're going to be talking about Nashville and the bombing. We're going to be talking about COVID relief and the veto. We're going to be talking about what's coming in 2020. We're going to be talking about a lot of conspiracies. And I'm going to get right into that. And of course, if you do want to comment, you can on Twitter, if Facebook looks it through, on YouTube, and we will be able to respond to your comments. You can also call into the program at 607-242-1582. With that being said, let's start off. I think the best way to start is to talk about COVID relief. Now, we've been talking about this all week. On December 21st, we found out about the COVID relief. In fact, on December 21st, that was the first time any actual documentation was provided to members of Congress, as well as ourselves and the media and the public, to be able to review. And we were told that the entire process on December 21st, like we spoke about last week, was COVID relief. And we were told it was going to be a $900 billion deal. This was focused on the American people and making sure that you are going to be okay. Then we actually got the document. And the document didn't quite say the same thing. In fact, as we have covered it, the document says pretty much everything but that. It's focused on funding for foreign countries, programs that have nothing to do with COVID or COVID relief or creating jobs, and the American public were given $600. Wow. What a wonderful gift. We are getting back $600 of our hard-earned money, and we're going to be giving out hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign governments around the world. One of the big things that stuck out to me, and I think a lot of people around the world, and a lot of people in the United States, was the $10 million being given to Pakistan for a gender program. It's not even gender studies. A lot of people said, well, it's gender studies. We have no idea what it is. It is a $10 million gift from the United States to Pakistan for gender programs, whatever that ambiguous thing means. And we're paying $845 million to run the government of Jordan. That's just ridiculous. That is absolutely insane. And it's aggravating. But it isn't the biggest part of the problem. See, this is $2.3 trillion. It means that we're going to be spending about $9 trillion just this year. We're adding $5 trillion, half of all the debt that the Obama administration created, which was double all the debt prior to the Obama administration combined. And we're adding that in 1 year. And we have to ask the question that why are we spending this money on useless programs If we're supposed to be focusing on the American people, the American economy, why are we wasting money in places that are unnecessary, given this is a funding bill, but why are we wasting? What's the excess for? And we have to answer the question of politicians who are using this for their benefit. In particular, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, who came out earlier today, the 27th of December, saying that the response for the COVID-19 relief bill, vetoing that, is unbelievably cruel. Now, I find this to be incredibly stupid and self-serving. When we hear Bernie Sanders, a self-proclaimed socialist, a communist in our government, whose ultimate goal is the destruction of the United States government, of a repurposing of our government and our people to create a socialist utopia like Venezuela, which is what he said back in 2016, 2015. We need to become more like Venezuela, a nation that right now is starving its own people. It has been reported by the New York Times, has gone out and killed well over 5,000 of its own people. It's disarmed its own people. It's falling apart. This is what he wants us to become. And his reasoning for that is, well, socialism is great. And we need to be more like that. And we need to just give and give without any thought of the consequences of those actions, which has been one of the main reasons why we've seen countries like North Korea, like Cuba, like Venezuela. They've completely failed. Their economic failures, their social and political failures, because they don't consider what's the consequence. This isn't about helping those people. It's about destroying the governments that run the nations, and the people be damned. So that's something I think is obviously hypocritical, and why we listen and why we ask someone like Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, what do they think about this? They're hypocrites. They're absolute hypocrites. In particular, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as we showed earlier in the week, as much as she's talking about, oh, this is a horrible deal and we didn't have enough time to read the bill, and she's right, she voted for it. She voted for it. So she's an absolute hypocrite. What is she really trying to say? That she wanted to get some brownie points with her people, the far left, the socialists, by saying this is a horrible bill and something is being done against the will of the American people, and then she voted for it? Well, if you think if it was a bad bill and you didn't have time to read it, if you think it's a blank open contract and they're just filling in everything they need to without people knowing, people are being bamboozled, vote against it. You don't vote for it, you vote against it. And 53 members of the House of Representatives did, in fact, do that. And 6 members of the Senate, in fact, did that. They voted against the bill because it's a bad bill. And you don't know what's in the bill. I mean, we're still finding out what's in those 5,593 pages. It's very convoluted. And so we're finding out more and more things like the various committees that are made with no explanation of how much money is going to be spent on this for purposes we still don't even understand. How much money is going to be spent on foreign governments for reasons we don't understand. It makes no sense. But I listened to Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders, as he spoke about this, and I want to show it to you, he says in there, what the president is doing right now is unbelievably cruel, said Bernie Sanders. Many millions of people are losing their extended unemployment benefits. They're going to be evicted from their apartments because of the eviction moratorium is ending. We're looking at a way to get the vaccine distributed to tens of millions of people. There's money in that bill. Let's stop for a second and actually look at the rhetoric that Bernie Sanders is throwing out there, trying to get an emotional response. And let's go sentence by sentence. What the president is doing right now is unbelievably cruel. What's cruel is in a $2.3 trillion spending bill, less than half of that, only $900 billion, is actually being spent on the American people in the middle of the COVID crisis and an economic collapse. That seems cruel to me, that we are wasting money on foreign governments to teach gender programs for tens of millions of dollars. $10 million could keep alive thousands of businesses in America. They could help hundreds of families, if not thousands of families, to be able to keep their homes and to be in rentals. Instead, we're spending it overseas. That seems cruel. Now, you may disagree with me. You may say, Mike, but that's not exactly right. Please do explain to me how it isn't. Because as far as I can tell, we're spending money that we don't need to spend on things we don't need to spend it on, especially at this moment. And because we're doing that, that is cruel. And to do anything else is to pander to the low information voters to gain political power, which is something that Bernie Sanders has been doing since 2015. So he's wrong. It isn't unbelievably cruel. I mean, what has the president done? He's actually stood up for the American people. In my lifetime, this is the first time I recall, and it doesn't matter whether you like President Trump or not. Doesn't matter. It is absolutely immaterial. This is the first time in 52 years that I can recall where the president has stood up to Congress and said, you're not doing enough for the American people. Go back, do it again. It's that simple. Go back, do it again. You're not helping the American people enough at a time that you're telling them that they are in dire straits. So whether you like President Trump or not is absolutely immaterial to the fact that this is what's being done. And this is what is being said is unbelievably cruel. The media and certain politicians are seriously trying to emotionally manipulate the public by making you think this is a bad thing, that you should only get $600. No one should fight to give you $2,000, as President Trump has offered, that you should be a second priority of the government as opposed to overseas spending on foreign governments. Somehow, I don't think it's unbelievably cruel to focus on the American people as opposed to foreign governments at a time of domestic crisis. You may think I'm wrong. That's okay. But let's go on to what else Bernie Sanders says, because we need to understand this as a nation so that we can speak up and address this as a nation, because we're being divided. We're being separated by emotional reasons, and that's hurting us. And I'll get into that and how that plays into what we see in the Nashville bombing and how that's going to affect 2021. But let's go on. Bernie Sanders goes on to say many millions of people are losing their extended unemployment benefits. That's something that's coming from the states. That's not necessarily from the federal government. And they're going to be evicted from their apartments because the eviction moratorium is ending. At some point, no matter what we do, the eviction moratorium is going to end. And at some point, there are thousands of people, it is estimated somewhere around 5 to 12 million American families are going to be faced with eviction. That is going to happen. Nothing that is being done right now, $600, the average person's, and we did this in a video last week, it's about $2,000 a month for between a studio and a two-bedroom apartment. The average American is spending about $2,000 a month. They're paying you $600. People have been out of work and have fallen behind on their bills for roughly 6 months. That's $12,000. They're giving you $600. Really, what is unbelievably cruel is you're expecting that if you give the American people $600, that's going to help them pay off their eviction notices that are somewhere between $2,000 and $12,000. That doesn't make sense. And telling me that, well, it's not going to happen on January 1st, it's going to happen on February 1st instead, that doesn't answer the problem. You're not fixing the problem. that both the landlords need to get paid for their property and the way it's being used, and people need housing. This is a dodge. It is an emotional manipulation, making you say, oh my God, it's so terrible to kick people out evictions on January 1st. Let's wait until February 1st. It's the same problem. There is no solution that has been offered by Congress. Why wouldn't the president say, go back and do it again? Give me a better answer for the American people. Because what you're doing right now is kicking it down the road. Now, I don't know. Maybe you disagree with me. I know that Facebook refuses to allow you to have this conversation, which is why they have completely blocked us. I believe that Twitter is live right now, but we've seen that they have gone through a great deal of censorship. They are at this moment deleting comments, and we will show you the proof of that. They are at the moment deleting accounts, and they've done over 8,000 this year. So there's a lot of censorship going on. This is a problem, especially at a time when you're being told that you should be grateful and thankful for something that puts you as a secondary citizen, puts you in second place, that makes you less than important to the overall result, and doesn't resolve any of the issues at hand. $600 is not going to fix it. We're increasing the national debt. If we're going to increase the national debt by trillions and trillions of dollars to $9 trillion, we're going to have $5 trillion in 1 year, double the amount that the national government spends in a year. If we're going to do that, shouldn't we be focusing on the American people first, the American economy first? Shouldn't that be where the majority of the money is being spent? Because at this moment, it isn't. And you're perfectly fine to call in, type in, leave a message, and say, Mike, well, no, you just misunderstand. Because I want to hear, if I'm missing this, if I'm misunderstanding this, if there's money that's being spent that I'm not aware of, please do tell me. Tell me how we have spent our time focused on the American people to resolve these problems. Because I've looked through the bills. There isn't a resolution to these problems. It's been pushed down, but there is no answer. We get our first comment today, and I want to thank you for this, from Luna, who says, there's no common sense in Congress. We need to wipe the legislature clean. Term limits. Term limits. I believe in it. The people have to rise up. Well, we're going to get into that, Luna, because there's a theme here. And you're going to see it, and it's in Nashville. And we're hearing a lot of that commentary, actually even before the Nashville bombing. But you're right. We do need term limits. This is corruption, and this is idiocy. And we are being told by the major news media, no, you just don't understand. Orange man bad. You know, as of January 20th, 2021, that will no longer be an excuse. What's the excuse going forward? Telling me orange man bad does not stop people from being evicted from their homes, which we were speaking about in a recent video. That does not help people put food on their plates. That does not bring back the 1,500 businesses a day that have closed since we started with the COVID lockdowns. That's just not an answer. It's an emotional response. It's an emotional reaction, but it doesn't fix the problem. And we need to really focus on our elected officials about this. The best thing we could have done was, in fact, go out there and have the veto. In fact, we were talking about it, and this is from our video, which is the title of which, who has big balls to say no on COVID relief spending, and almost no one in the government did. But the few people who did were expected to do so. We're talking about Rand Paul, we're talking about Ted Cruz, Thomas Massey, a few others, and President Trump. By the way, you're also being told consistently, President Trump, no one expected him to do this. Matter of fact, I think it was in this article, which came out this morning, December 27th, speaking about Dr. Fauci. And this is important because it's about the vaccine passport. And this is 2021. And in there, he says in this article, and I believe it is in this section, the trust in the government is gone. And what he's focusing on is that we will now need to not only do we have to get the vaccine, you have to carry around some identification showing that you got vaccinated. And if you get that, then you're able to go out and go travel. You're going to be able to go and get to the movie theater. You're going to be allowed to go bowling. You're going to be allowed to go to a music concert. Basically, you're going to be allowed to live your life if you got the vaccine. But if you didn't get the vaccine, well, then you can't do anything. Now, we've posed this idea before on the program, and I want to say it again. How far away are we from, here's my ID card so that you can get government benefits? Because I think that's running down, it's the same path. Oh, you need your vaccination card. You need to show that you've been vaccinated so that you're able to travel. By the way, the government's not going to help you with your eviction unless you've gotten the vaccine. The government's not going to help you with your lack of a job and needing to have money for food and basic life unless you've gotten the vaccine. But it's totally your choice. We're not going to mandate the vaccine. We're just going to make your life near impossible without the vaccine. And by the way, we don't even, and in case you think, well, I've got the vaccine, so the rest of my life goes back to normal. You don't have to wear a mask. You can actually be around people again. No, you can't. Because in the article from CNN Business, it's also unclear how effective the vaccines are in stopping the transmission of the virus. Dr. Julia Parsonette, an infectious disease specialist at Stanford University. So while a vaccine passport app will show you that you received the shot, it may not be a guarantee that you safely attend an event or get on a flight. Wait a minute. So you're going to get a vaccine that you won't be able to go and do anything without being able to show proof. But the government still needs to restrict your freedoms. The government still needs to impose all of these restrictions on your life because, well, it's still not 100%. We're still not sure that you're not going to be dangerous to someone somewhere at some point. And by the way, the vaccine is mutating in Britain right now. So the vaccine you got this year isn't going to be useful next year. Because just like the flu, COVID-19, it's a virus, it mutates. And like the flu, every year, you can get the flu shot every year. No guarantee you won't get the flu. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to give someone else the flu. And every year you're going to get a new flu shot because the shot from last year doesn't work for this year. Luna mentions this is a pathway to mass surveillance and social credit. It's a pathway to a lot of things. It's a problem. But we need to understand this. This is what 2021 is. We are getting less money, making us more dependent on the government. In fact, I think it was in Bernie's comment. Excuse me. In the comment from Bernie Sanders, I believe he says, where is it? That what we need to do is to pass this. Oh, there it is. And he says in his article, as quoted by The Hill, this is a terrible economic crisis facing the country. The current bill should be passed immediately, after which another bill for the proposed $2,000 checks could be passed quickly. So he's kicking the can down the road, and he's saying that, well, here's $600. That'll hold you over. And then when we have another government and other people in charge and other people who will not question what we're doing, will not question the fact that we had all of 5 hours to read a 5,000-page bill, people who will not question whether or not we're giving more money overseas than to the American people, then we're going to give you a check for $2,000. Maybe. At some point. Possibly. By the way, you're going to get the COVID vaccine, and you're still going to have to social distance. You're going to still have to wear masks, and we're still going to intermittently shut down random businesses because science, even though there is no science involved in this process. And quite honestly, there is no science in this. When Governor Cuomo wakes up and says, oh, and by the way, we're shutting down all the movie theaters, we're shutting down all the gyms. Why? The casinos are open, some of them. He wants to shut down the casinos. As a great example, the Indian Nation casinos are open. But the New York State casinos that he fought to get are shut down or reduced in their time at the moment. And they're being destroyed. People are losing their jobs. There are layoffs because of this. The economic benefit, the money going to educational funding is being reduced, destroyed, gone. He's killed 12,000 people because of his misreading of the facts at the time. And this is all science? Science says, according to the WHO, World Health Organization, the European chief, that the very worst thing you can do and the very last thing you should do is a lockdown of any, whether it's a state, a city, or a nation. Lockdowns are the worst thing possible and the last resort possible. Except that's the number one go-to of Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom, Governor Whitmer. This is what they do consistently. And this is what they are alleging and stating that they're intending to do in 2021. The very worst thing possible. So the science is telling us, and we have seen, because of the lockdowns, overdoses have skyrocketed. Over 81,000 overdoses in this nation. Most of that happening because of the lockdown. Domestic abuse, last figures that we had available for New York State alone, were up over 30% and looking to increase. That was back in March, at the beginning of the shutdown. The number of violent crimes has gone up. The number of shootings has gone up exponentially. We see that there is the belief that alcohol abuse has gone up. Suicide has gone up. In Japan, there are more people who died in 1 month from suicide than from COVID all year long. These are the realities, and these are the facts. But the answer is science. Okay, science says, let's look at it from a scientific point of view. We did the lockdowns. COVID continued to exist. It continued to grow. We are now at a point where COVID is resurging. Lockdowns have been done, social distancing, masks, and it isn't stopping the airborne virus. Why are you going to do the same thing over again? It didn't work the first time. Why are you doing it again and assuming, well, this time it's going to work? Where is the science in that? It doesn't make sense. But, you know, I say these things and I get censored for them from Twitter, from Facebook. You know, but there's a point to this. And I'm going to keep going. So we understand, looking at 2021, we are looking at higher levels of censorship. We are looking at higher levels of restrictions of our freedoms coming from the government. We're looking at the government buying us off with as cheaply as possible, with as little funding as possible, and with as many promises of something better in the future. That's the setup for 2021. And we hear Joe Biden, who is perfectly okay with that. Joe Biden has come out this week and said that Congress did its job, that $600 per person for America while giving away trillions of dollars overseas, that's perfect. That's the Congress doing their job. That's the focus for America. I hope you feel confident about where Joe Biden is, even as he believes that the science is leading us to another 6-week lockdown, according to his COVID advisor. this is a problem. In fact, it's such a big problem. There was recently a poll. This is from America Speaks. This is the YouGov polling. And in this polling, we see that, and I want to go from the top here, and this is December 27th, as you can see. And the results in the poll is that what do most Americans think? Is it a good deal or a bad deal, the $600, the $900 billion economic relief program? 71% of America says it's a bad deal. Now, think about that. 71% of America says it's a bad deal. The president is saying it's a bad deal. But Congress and the media are saying, no, it's a great deal. And you're a bad person for not agreeing with us. It seems like there's a problem here in the priorities. You can say orange man bad, but if 71% of America is saying this isn't helping us, shouldn't Congress go back and do their job? Aren't they obligated by sworn oath to do the best for their people, their constituents, to represent the will of the people? 71% of America says this is a bad deal. 53 members of the House voted against this bill, which works out to roughly, I'm doing quick math here, about 1 in 6. Only 6 members of the Senate out of 100, 6%, actually thought this was a bad deal. 71% of America thinks that. Now, many people said, is $600 enough money? And the answer is 85% of America said $600 is not enough. And I think I've made it very clear why. $2,000 for rent, $600, not enough. Your groceries, the average person in America is going to spend over $600 in food. It's not enough. We're talking about bills that have been going on for months because you don't have a job, because that job was shut down by your governor of your state. Not because you didn't go to work, not because you're lazy. The job doesn't exist. We have lost about 1,500 jobs, possibly more, per day. Over 1 in 5 businesses in America at this moment have become non-existent. And the projections are in New Jersey, in New York State, in Colorado, across the country. We keep getting these results that say, and you're probably going to see somewhere between 40 to 60% of the remaining businesses to close forever as well. And Congress is saying, well, yeah, but $600 covers that. Really? This is what we are getting. So let's go on. What does YouGov say? What are people going to be spending their money on? So let's say you get $600. Let's say the $600 goes through. And that's the money that the government's giving you so that you are going to be okay. Where are you spending the money? Now, mind you, the government wants to give you a stimulus because they need you to spend that money so that the economy will stay afloat. They need you to go out and buy TVs. They need you to buy sneakers. They need you to buy jeans. They need you to go out and hopefully not just one pair of $500 jeans, not just one pair of $400 sneakers. They need you to go out and buy a bunch of stuff. But if you don't buy a bunch of stuff, that stimulus does not improve. It doesn't help build new businesses. It doesn't keep the businesses that are out there afloat. And that means it becomes a bigger problem down the road. So where are people going to spend their $600 checks to pay bills? 27% of people are going to spend it on paying bills. 20% are going to spend it on their debt. That's 47% of America not spending money on the things that keep the economy going. Another 19%, almost 20% now, are going to be spending on essential items. We're talking about almost 60% of America is spending money in places that are not going to improve the economy. And therefore, that means the problem with the economy will continue. And I can't blame people for that. I can't dispute that. And as much as the media wants to tell us, well, this is the problem of President Trump, only 4% of the population believe that this is a problem from Trump. This is a problem from Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. This is about politicians playing against each other. And the answer should be reopening the government. Now, when it comes to looking at what's going on in Britain, most Americans, 39% of Americans say they're somewhat worried, with another 28% that say they're very worried about whether or not the virus in Britain is going to affect us here. And people are saying very clearly that if COVID comes from over in the United Kingdom into the United States, well, what should we do about that? Should we shut down the nation? Should we go into another lockdown? And here it is right here, this section right here. 55% of the nation say they want to lock down the country. This is what's going to be 2021. We're going to be locking down the nation. Luna, you tell me, does that make sense to you? Does that sound scientific? Does that sound like it's going to help the country, that we won't need another stimulus, that the economy will continue to grow? Or does it sound like this is a pathway to a implosion of our economy? Anyone who's watching this, please tell me. You can call in 607-242-1582. You can call in. You can leave a comment on YouTube, definitely. Twitter, maybe. And Facebook, they got me blocked right now because they don't want you to have this conversation. So I'm bringing this all up, even as I'm fighting the internet overlords, because they don't want you to know facts. They don't want you to know details. They don't want you to read the bill. They don't want you to know what the numbers are. They don't want you to see what everyone else is thinking. They want you to be isolated, alone, and afraid and terrified. And that's so un-American and one of the worst things possible. So, given that, and understanding that clearly, and understanding that the politicians, news media would prefer you to have this feeling, to say, we don't know what to do because the pandemic unemployment benefits have gone. We don't know what to do, as said on December 26th by KETV and out in Omaha. This is what they're spreading, that message amongst their people. We don't know what to do. The answer is, tell your congressman to do their job. That's to tell your senator to do their job. To say, hey, how about we don't focus on other countries as much as we focus on the American people? Let's put the American people first. Because if America is doing well, if our economy is okay, if our people aren't dying from overdoses or from suicide or from domestic abuse or from violent crimes, then we're able to help the other countries in the world like we always do anyway. We are the single most generous country in the world. We give more to everyone in the world than most of the rest of the world put together. And so maybe the answer is, what we should do if we won't reopen the country and reopen businesses is that we focus on the people, because it's the government that caused this problem, not the people, and not President Trump either, who shut down New York State. It wasn't President Trump. It was Governor Cuomo. Same thing in California, same thing in Michigan, same thing in many states, all the states actually, because it's the 10th Amendment. The federal government doesn't have that power until Joe Biden comes in and he's going to do a national lockdown, giving himself more power that the Constitution does not provide for him than ever before. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Mike, I don't like that. It's a heavy subject. It's right after Christmas. I'm sorry, the world is going on. We can't time these things, but we do need to be aware of these things. We have 4 days until 2021 starts. We have, beyond that, another 20 days before Joe Biden is in office, potentially. And we have these things happening right now. In 4 days, up to 12 million people could be forced out or start the process of kicking them out of their homes. We have people who are starving. If we're not going to talk about it now, when is a better time? After it becomes even worse? By the way, lightening the mood a little bit and switching the subject somewhat. I don't know if anyone noticed, but talking about the end of the year, in the summary of the end of the year, we have done our top 2020 review of our videos this year. We had exponential growth. We've grown into Britain. We've grown in Germany, in Peru, South America, Australia. We've had enormous growth, especially also in the United States and in Canada. And we thank you for that. And we put together a video of the top videos of the year as chosen by you. If you haven't seen it, we do recommend it. And for something completely lighthearted, there it is. We do recommend you check out our video, A Very Post-Racial PC Holiday Tale. It's a PC retelling of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. You may find it funny. Some of the more sensitive people out there will find it incredibly offensive. I think it's funny. That's why I did it. So we hope you enjoy it. That being said, we have to get serious here. Because in 4 days, in roughly 24 days, there is the looming threat, as we've been told, of the Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? It is a way of revisioning, and we know how great revision movies are, but revisioning government, revisioning the world and the economy. It is a new perspective. And I don't really know why we need a new perspective. The perspective we have right now, the world we have right now, is not perfect. Then again, we're human beings, and I can't point to a time in the world where it ever has been perfect, or even hinted at being perfect. But what I can tell you is there are more people living better lives today than at any point in the time of history. I can tell you that at this moment today, we've been able to go to the moon and back. We have satellites and research that's going on at the edge of the galaxy right now. We have a better understanding of everything and how the universe was created than ever before. We're able to feed more people around the globe than at any time in human history combined. We can feed everyone on the planet, theoretically. We can improve the quality of life of everyone on the planet. We bring more people out of poverty per day right now than at almost any, well, more than any time in the a lifetime. In fact, just this year, I believe, and this is not exact, but the number of people who've been taken out of poverty this year, global poverty, have been taken out of poverty around the world this year is more than the number of people who were in poverty during the Middle Ages. And this is what they want to reset. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you about that. Because it doesn't matter what you think about the Great Reset. What matters is, what are they resetting to? See, they tell you, we need to fix the world. We need to make it better. We're going to improve everything. How? It's kind of like when Obama said, well, we need to transform America. And my question throughout the entire time he said that was, transform it to what? You notice they stop their question. These progressives, these far leftists, they keep saying, well, we need to fix it. We need to make it better. How? What do we make it into? I mean, this is a very essential question. And we have a government right now that is in deep trouble because no one trusts our government. I don't care whether you believe or do not believe. Most people, the overwhelming majority, do not believe that the 2020 election was a secure election. They do not believe that it was a fair election. And this is among Democrats as well as Republicans, the people. Now, politicians have an entirely different point of view based on their politics, but the people see irregularities. They see people running ballots through a machine 3 times on video with no one watching over them. They see people being sent away and a small crew of people with questionable backgrounds and motivations counting away with no accountability. We see numbers that constantly change in computer systems that are providing votes, taking from one person and giving to another. Whether or not you think that the final vote tally was correct, you have to admit that there's something that was very wrong in this election. It wasn't perfect. It obviously wasn't secure. We have in the New York 22nd race, votes are being found a month after the fact in someone's drawer, and they are being counted, even though 20% of those votes are being shown to be votes that were illegal votes. This is a problem. I'm going to get to Nashville. I'm going to get to Nashville, Biker for Life. I'm leading up to that. Another Nashville bomber happening, truck surrounded by police. So that is an ongoing event. Since you're trying to hijack my live stream, Biker for Life, you want to tell us, what is it? I'm not going to it because I don't know what that link is, and I don't know that that's accurate. But if you're going to if you're going to try and sensationalize my stream, then tell us what's going on. Don't just jump in and try and hijack it and say, hey, ooh, be scared. I understand. What are the details? You're telling me that it's happening. If you're saying, Mike, please check this out, that's one thing. But I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that in the news. I understand. You have a video you want people to go see. I don't know why you want people to go to see that video. What is the news reporting? I am not seeing that news reporting. I understand what you're saying. It's in Lebanon. Who's reporting this? Where are you getting this information from? Because I'm looking it up. I'm not seeing the information. I'm not seeing what you're saying. If you want to try and hijack an event, at least let people know what's going on. Don't sensationalize it. Don't try and hijack people's emotions. Not on my program. That's fine. But you're saying that people should be checking something. You're not willing to tell us what the details are. You're not telling us what your source is. You're not telling us what's happening, and I can't find it. And you're trying to get people to react emotionally for a website, for a video, which makes me believe that you're doing it for their benefit. If you can't answer the questions, why should I trust you? See, folks, this is the way we should address anything. I don't expect you to. Maybe it is happening. I don't see it. I'm just looking it up right now. And I'm trying to find out what's going on in Nashville. I don't see any of this news. I don't see it trending at this moment. So why should I ask anyone to click over to a video that's saying, oh, something is going on, and nothing is being shown? I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying I can't find it. Give me evidence. Why should I let my audience be used emotionally? It doesn't make sense. See, and that's the thing, folks. That's the thing. An hour ago, I can see that WKRN is mentioning that it was close to a suspicious vehicle on a road. Nothing's exploded. This isn't trending anywhere. But there is news that's similar to Nashville. There is a truck that is playing an audio. And see, here's the thing I wanted to say about that. And just to let you see this, folks, this is what's trending right now, looking up Lebanon, Tennessee. And then you will find WKRN has some news about this. The local news channel 5 is reporting that there is a box truck that has a similar audio to the one that was in Nashville that was making an announcement. So something may be happening there. But again, if I'm giving you details, not emotion. I want you to know what's going on, not to be fearful. Information is not the same thing as fear. And that's what we got on Christmas Day. A lot of people are fearful. And we've heard everything from this is about 5G to this is a conservative terrorist. I've heard that it's a conservative terrorist. It's a far left progressive terrorist. This is about Donald Trump. This is about China. This is about the global economy. It's about the Great Reset. You know, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. And I have to ask you, which one is it? And at the same time, we have things like this. One of the things I was going to discuss about Nashville, one of the tweets, it's been wiped out. Twitter blocked it. They removed it, which is troubling. Because what we do know, and I'm going to keep an eye out for what's going on in Lebanon, Tennessee, but what we do know is that on Christmas Day, there was a bombing in Nashville, that 41 buildings were damaged and 3 people were injured. And that there are some human remains that we believe were found at the site, which may or may not be the individual who placed the bomb. A gentleman by the name of Anthony Q. Warner, as being reported by the Tennessean. And that he is a person of interest, and that he was against 5G. And I have some questions about this. I mean, there's a lot of questions about this because it doesn't quite make sense. Now, I understand whoever did this was trying to make sure that no one would be hurt. That's why gunshots went off. That's why there was an announcement that was being broadcast from the trailer. And there was a time frame before the bomb went off in the middle of the night so that very few people were around. But it's a statement. Now, is it a statement against 5G? Is it against, I've heard that there's a Chinese company that was somewhere located nearby the AT&T building. I've heard, and it's a good question, was this about someone trying to commit a robbery? Think about it. All of the attention has gone to the AT&T building. The 911 was disrupted. Police communications were disrupted, all because of this bombing that killed no one, but took up everyone's attention. And I'm asking, and what else happened? What other crimes happened in Nashville during that time frame? What other businesses were broken into? What else has happened? Because it's an excellent cover screen that no one's paying attention to anything else. I mean, no one's even talking about what happened over with the COVID relief veto that we knew was coming, that is going to be tried to be overridden on December 29th. And Luna says, tense, trying times, a lot of instability. I respect your groundedness in the storm. Well, we have to be. It's one thing to have a conversation and to say, well, I think it's this, or this is going on, or, oh my God, I'm afraid of something else happening. But rather than promote fear, rather than to jump at every loose end, let's stop, let's think about it. What makes the most sense? What's going on? Do I think this was about 5G? I don't think so. People have been, I used to work for, not Sprint, what are these guys called? Verizon. There, couldn't think of their name for a second. I worked for Verizon, and I had a lot of people talking to me about 5G, and I've had a lot of people talk to me about their concerns about the signal, that it could cause cancer in the brain, that it is a long-term health hazard. I've had a lot of people putting out information about that, but not once have I ever heard anyone ever say, and we should bomb things. We should blow up the towers. I've never heard anything like that. No one has gone that far. So why are they doing it now? I think this has a lot to do with what's going on. We lost our trust in our government. We lost our faith in our government because of the election, because of what we've seen with that. And because of that, then why do we trust they're going to protect us from a signal that could cause brain damage or cancer or other problems, or that the government could use this new technology to spy on people more effectively? And by the way, you don't need this higher level of technology to do that. Facebook already does, and I have caught this and I've put this on video before, Facebook does turn on your phone and your microphone and listen to you right now. We know that Alexa has been listening to people in their bedrooms and in their homes. This is a fact. We know these things have happened. So we don't trust our government because we have a good reason to. And we don't trust our businesses because we have a pretty good reason to. And if we keep losing that trust, well, the result is we get things where the government's telling us, look, we're doing something great for you. And then on the other hand, we have people saying, obviously you're lying to me. Let me go do it myself. And that's where vigilantes come out. Now, Luna mentions supposedly it was a bomb targeted AT&T and that there is an NSA office or something. But this is all news, so I don't know for sure. I've heard that it's the NSA. I heard that there is a Chinese-owned business right behind the AT&T building, and that it was connected to the servers, which were connected to the servers used for voting systems that were connected to Germany, which we do know some of the servers were connected to Germany. And so that this was covering those tracks in case anyone tried to check it out. I've heard that. But I've also heard that it's about the 5G signal. See, there's the thing. There's way too much. We do know for a fact it is a form of terrorism. And we on this program denounce any group and any individual that uses violence to intimidate, the threat of violence, intimidation, or fear to cause other human beings to submit against their will. We reject that. We refute that. We denounce that in the strongest words possible and in the strongest actions possible. It is wrong. I don't care if it's coming from BLM. I don't care if it's coming from someone in Nashville. It's the same thing. There is no positive that comes from terrorism, whether it's on a domestic or international level. I don't believe it in ISIS. I don't believe in it with the IRA. I don't believe with it in America. And I don't care if you think you're protecting people from 5G. You're doing more damage by trying to be a terrorist than you are providing, even if no human being is hurt. Because the fear and the intimidation and the dominoes that fall because of it are more painful. It's kind of like looking again at COVID. Well, we're going to lock everything down and we're going to protect some people's lives, and you're going to destroy how many more people because of drug overdoses, because of domestic abuse, because of suicide, because of just violence. These are the things. There's a consequence to our actions, which is why it's so important that we as the public need to speak up and to share and communicate with each other in a rational, reasonable way where we're clear. Honestly, I'm not upset with Biker for Life. I'm upset with what they did. I'm upset that they created fear and they tried to use my program to do that. That upset me, that they're throwing out something that doesn't necessarily, we have no idea what that is. That upsets me because that incites fear, and that incites people to do things based on emotion that may be worse for them than anything else? The answer is we take our time, we look at the details. Yeah, it means we're not acting instantly. Better not to act instantly and to act better and make a better decision than just to rush headlong. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't expecting that, and I don't see that, and I am looking for the news, and I am trying to keep up on it. And I do see that there is a blue check mark, and just to give people a better understanding of what some of the latest news is on this, the Metro Nashville Police Department, an officer says that the RV used in the Nashville bombing was playing downtown. Okay. I mean, I'm looking for news on this. I'm not seeing it. There it is. BNO News, who are a blue check mark, so they are a news organization. Bomb squad's investigating a box truck near Lebanon, Tennessee. It was playing a similar song to the Nashville bombing, and the driver's been taken into custody. Let me ask you, is that worth being terrified? Is that worth screaming, there's another bomb? Is that worth it? Someone has already been taken into custody. It is already being investigated. People have been separated. No life is threatened. Is that worth terrifying people over? I don't think so. We get the details. We get to make a decision. Does this mean that this is a copycat? Does this mean that this is part of the same group? Or is this about 5G? Or is this about terrorism? Is this meant to cover up something else? Let's stop and think about these things, folks. Because if we're just rushing headlong and screaming at the top of our lungs, nobody gets to know what's going on. And everyone panics. And then people make bad decisions. I'm kind of glad that Biker for Life brought this up. And whether Biker Life has been on the program before, which I don't recall, whether I lose them as someone in my audience forever or not, I'm not going to be upset because of what I did. We know we need details. We need facts. We need to think. We need to know who we're going to hold accountable for the things that happen. We need to understand what happened, why it happened, and what we can do about it. If it's about 5G, then we can start that investigation. We can check. I've seen a bunch of research on 5G, no worse than 4G. But if you think the data is corrupt, let's look at the data so that we can save as many lives as possible. Not just run around screaming, it's 5G. If you think it's about the data at the AT&T servers, what was that? Let's investigate that. What was the data that was there? What groups were organized and connected to that? What kind of national security risk did that pose? Is there a Chinese organization, a country, a business owned by China that is situated there, that is connected to those servers? Could that have manipulated our elections or anything else in our nation for that matter? Remember, Eric Swalwell is sitting on the House Intelligence Committee, and he's not connected to our elections, but he had a Chinese spy sleeping with him, allegedly, and, was involved with his campaign. We know that Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy working for her campaign, working for her, and she sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee. That had nothing to do with the American election of 2020, but yet this is a problem, and not many people talk about it. And we know that the Confucius Institute, which was at and founded at in the United States at the same college, University of Maryland, College Park, that Eric Swalwell went to. At the same time he went there, and influenced perhaps him and many other people, perhaps. And that there are over 200 of them, or there were 200 of them, in the United States at our colleges, influencing students all over the place. Is this connected? I don't know. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I am saying if we're not asking the questions and if we are not demanding that our leaders are trying to find out answers, to try and give us answers we can trust and believe in, then we have a problem. Brain Freeze. Hey, Brain Freeze. Good to see you again. Mentions, here's a wild theory that just popped into my head. And I'm a suspicious person by nature, so I just like throwing things out there. Please do. See, now I'm ready for it. It's not sensationalized. What's your theory? Because we all have theories. The nation's been talking about what's going on in Nashville for a while. We all have theories. What's yours? And while you type that out, it's not bad and there's nothing wrong and it's not some kind of horrible thing. Conspiracy theories, they're theories. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're absolutely the truth. We don't know. Just because it sounds odd or different doesn't mean it's the truth. Because it's just as odd and just as much of a conspiracy theory to say, well, the election was completely secure and nothing went wrong and everything was absolutely correct. And we're looking at video evidence where, no, I have doubts. We're watching and getting reports of the changing of votes. I have doubts. And yet, how is it not a conspiracy theory to say, well, that's not true? As promoted by YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the major media. But Brain Freeze goes on to say, the person who perpetuated this crime had murdered his wife and needed a plausible way to get rid of the body by creating a smoke storm. Of course, this is just a complete blank theory. Well, the gentleman, Anthony, his name is Anthony Warner, Anthony Q. Warner, does not seem to be married. Although, and here is a really curious part, Anthony Warner gave his home to a woman, Miss Swing, who lives in California, and we have no understanding of why. He's actually given her two homes. He gave her a home in 2018, I believe it was, 2012. He gave her his father's home for some unknown reason. And then a month ago, he gave her another home. No cost, no money. He just gave it to her. We don't know why. And she hasn't mentioned why. And she lives in California. But she's received two homes from this gentleman for some unknown reason. That strikes me as odd. That strikes me as something that we need to investigate. And they are. And they are. And we're going to find out more about this. But it means there's more to this. Now, could this be another organization? Is this connected to what we see in Lebanon, Tennessee? The answer is, let's not be fearful. Matter of fact, I saw a video recently on YouTube of a gentleman who's talking about the National Economic Security Strategic Act of 2018, otherwise known as NYSERDA. And this is the bill. So that you can see this for yourself and so that you aren't going off on tangents that people are just using emotion here. He was talking about the NESA, NYSERDA. And there's also another bill, which is the GSERA. But these are the two bills that he's talking about. And the bill essentially is just a plan for the United States to be able to keep business going. Basically, we're trying to figure out how to make our country better off. And I've actually read the bill. It's only got 4 members who are supporting it in the Senate. It's got a 4% chance of actually making it through the Senate. And when I look at this, I do not see the conspiracy. It's something that's been going on since 2017. And when you read through this, it's saying the government's got to figure out a plan. The president has to figure out a plan to be able to promote free, fair, and reciprocal economic relationships. It's one of the principles of this, that we need to reach out to our allies and to say, okay, how can we make a more vibrant, better economy? And that's also the global aspect of it, is again, they're trying to figure out how do we make the American economy stronger, especially at a time where our debt is so crippling. Now, I've heard someone say that those two bills are part of the conspiracy and they're connected to the Nashville bombing. I don't believe it. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense. If someone knows what that is, please explain to me how. But seeing that the United States is trying to improve its economy and to deal with the fact that we have enormous debt that is growing at a fantastical rate, we are going to bankrupt our nation, which will destroy our freedom, then, of course we should be planning for that. Is that nefarious? I don't think so. I think it's necessary. But if it is nefarious, then I want someone to tell me, why is it nefarious? And please explain to me, why is that connected to AT&T, to a bomber? I don't understand that. And so we shouldn't be afraid, but we should be aware and we should be asking questions. Brainfreeze mentions the terrorism definition must have a political component, and that's if I am not mistaken. No, terrorism doesn't have to have a political component. Terrorism normally is enacted by groups that usually have some political goal, but you can be a religious terrorist just as much as you can be a political one. And there could be other reasons. The terrorism is anything that incites fear and terror and intimidation in the subject. And so normally we associate that with politics because that's normally the reason why people are doing it. But terrorism is not restricted to just politics. It could be anything. And so we have to understand that. Because the more we understand that, the more we can understand what's going on and we can try and combat it. And see, again, it's the fear. It's one of the things we fight against in this program. That's why we do free speech. That's why we talk to you, the public, and we reach out to you guys, because the more that we speak, the less fear that can cloud our minds, the less someone can emotionally manipulate us, forcing us to go and do something right now. Go do it right now. You got to. It's terrifying. It's absolutely amazing. Slow down. The more we talk, the more we think, the better we make a decision. The worst decisions are always made based on gut feelings and just instantaneous. And I'm not talking about for you personally. I'm talking about in policy for a nation, for a state, for a city. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to understand why you're doing it. You have to understand what are the consequences of it. Remember back in 2010 when President Obama passed the stimulus, the Obama stimulus, and we were told it was going to save the economy. It was going to fix the problem of all of the homes, the subprime loans. And what did it do? Well, the very first thing it did is 344,000 American families lost food stamps because no one stopped to think, hey, wait a minute, we need to adjust this in the law because this is income. And when people got this, this raised their income. And I want to say, if that happened in 2010, I am pretty sure it's going to happen again in 2020, in the 2020 taxes. Because remember, all of this money that the government has given us, that's income. Taxes have to be paid on that. You've been getting a government check for COVID in whatever form that you have gotten it, including the stimulus check, that $1,200 check, and this check that's coming for $600, or if it's $2,000, you got to pay taxes on that. And how many people have thought of that? And think about it. If you're getting food stamps right now or other government aid, and I'm not busting on anyone for getting government aid. But if you're getting government aid right now and you've been receiving this money from the government, did that just raise your income above the limit to be able to get that? Which means that you have to now repay the government for any of the aid that you have been receiving on top of the taxes that you have received. And not one person in the news media has mentioned that to the public that I'm aware of. If anyone watching this is anyone, whether you see this live or afterwards, if you see this, please let me know. Have you heard anyone in the news media say, by the way, all of the money you've received so far, the stimulus, the extended payments from your state, these are all taxable. You're going to have to pay the taxes in 2021 for this. And by the way, you also may no longer be at the same threshold to get the same amount of government aid if you are getting it. And therefore, you may owe the government more money. Has anyone talked about that? Because we should. But we're too busy being distracted by something like the bombing in Nashville and the veto of the COVID bill. In fact, the discussion about the COVID relief bill, which we were told would solve all our problems. The government's working for us. It's going to take care of us. And yet again, living up to Reagan's statement, the most dangerous and terrifying words are to hear, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Because it doesn't. It never does, because they don't think these things through. Do you think anyone has stopped to think through, oh, by the way, we're raising people's taxes and we're raising their incomes. They may not be able to get food stamps anymore. But you know what? Maybe if we ask them to go back, look at the bill that they've done, to slow down and stop trying to pump the media, to pump us with this emotional reaction and say, ooh, it's good for you. It's good for you. Don't complain. Don't ask any questions. Accept it because we said so. If we stop doing that and say, well, why are they mentioning that there's a problem? Why do most Americans, some 80% of Americans, say that $600 isn't enough? What didn't we pay attention to in the needs of our constituents that voted us into Congress to represent them and their needs? Where have we failed? Maybe if we hear politicians do that, then we won't have these stupid problems. Because it is a stupid problem, but I tell you right now, it is a problem that will come up. Just because no one has stopped to actually consider it yet doesn't mean it's not going to be there. And if you haven't thought about it and it applies to you, start thinking now. Because it will affect your family once it catches up and everyone says, oh, wait, you don't qualify anymore because you got too much money. Even though the government gave you the money, it doesn't matter because that counts as money and you no longer qualify. Which means you will feel like you do not trust the government anymore because it's deceiving you, because one hand is doing something and the other hand doesn't know and isn't paying attention to that. You got one hand giving you money, another hand saying you got too much money, so we're going to take away some of the help that the government has been providing you. You're going to feel like you're pissed off and you're going to want to strike out. And that's how we get things like potentially like Nashville. And it's how our government breaks down. And people use that as an advantage. And they come in and say, oh, here's the latest thing. Are you afraid? Follow me. I have an answer. Wait a minute. Who are you? Why am I following you? What's your answer? What's the problem? What's the solution? I mean, does that make sense, folks? Then we have to understand these. We have to understand this so we understand what we're doing. So we know that we're actually trying to help a problem, not make it bigger and not just push it down the road. I hope that's being clear. I hope people are understanding that because it's a big deal. And it makes a big difference. Luna, brain freeze. I love that you're asking the questions, that you're bringing up these thoughts. It is important for us to understand this. We have to consider these things, because if we don't consider them, and like you did, brain freeze, we have to consider, well, maybe it's something real simple, like somebody killed their wife, and all this else is just build up and adding on, and it's distraction, and it's unnecessary, and it gives more fear than is necessary. I would hope that's the case. I would actually prefer that, because some of the other implications are far, far more terrifying to me. But if that were the case, then we wouldn't have things like what we're seeing from Twitter, where they're wiping out information without any message, without any notification, without any reason. They're just wiping out information and don't expect you to know. They don't expect you to pay attention. That's why right now Facebook has wiped out this channel. They will not allow anyone to see this. They will not allow anyone to talk. It's why we're having a trouble to get the signal through on Twitter right now, and possibly even on YouTube. And that troubles me, because this very well could be the last year. It could be the last, at any moment, I could see, Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey coming in and wiping out 15 years of work that I've done. That we could see YouTube come in and Google and wipe out our channel and remove 10 years of videos, over 1,000 videos, covering every subject and talking with you, the public, because they don't want us to speak. That's where we are right now in America. That's what the Great Reset really is, I believe. The Great Reset isn't about coronavirus. It's not about COVID. It's not trying to protect you from something. It's about changing your perceptions, changing who's in power, and what they can do with that power. And I see that with COVID. The COVID relief is the same thing. Even what's happening in Nashville is the same thing. Not necessarily because of what's happening, but the reaction to it. The lockdowns aren't about COVID. They're about control. Because the science doesn't support what they're doing. The lockdowns are more dangerous than COVID is. It affects more people. It affects more people in a longer term by locking down the country than COVID ever did. We're seeing that the global reset affects more people everywhere in the world. We're seeing Nashville, because we do not trust our government, we do not trust our news media, that people are reacting and reacting in such a strong and radical manner. And it's probably going to get worse. And you should be prepared for that. Roy mentions, is it possible to start moving your videos to DLive? Roy, I don't know what DLive is. I know there's a few services out there, and it's kind of like Parler. Like, I joined Parler back in February. I joined Rumble about a month ago. Still trying to get things transferred over. And there's probably a better way to do it than I do. So we're trying to diversify. I have a website of my own, but a lot of it relies on YouTube. So is it possible? Sure. Am I familiar with all the different systems that are out there? No, because they don't have enough attention to have caught my attention yet. But please send us a link of DLive. I'll look into it. I'll check it out, because we have to be prepared. We have people who are using the emotion of what's going on to propel us to do things without thinking, and that is a consequence. And they are taking away our freedoms as they do it. You're afraid, again, and I'll go back to the YouGov video, the YouGov poll, where it says right here that if this new strain of COVID-19, which is in England right now, came to the United States, would you support or oppose your state implementing a lockdown to limit the spread? And 55% of America said yes. And you should be troubled by that. In part because the virus is already here. If we know there's if we figured out there's a second strain, that means that strain's already been around and already been traveling around people, because patient zero didn't walk into a hospital and say, hey, I have this new form of COVID. You should lock me and isolate me before anyone else gets it. It's already happened. And people, by the time we figure out these strains, they're already traveling around the world. That's how COVID in the first place got from China, a pretty remote village in China for the most part, into the United States and the rest of the world. It already spread. We found out about it afterwards. If you're telling me there's a new virus, which we've been hearing about for over a month now in Britain, then that means it's already spread around the world. So when people say, oh, would you support doing a lockdown because of this, it's already here. So we're going to destroy our country. We're going to destroy each other for that. That doesn't make sense. Let me get back to Roy mentions, Luna mentions precise. COVID could have been easily managed without lockdowns. There's a plethora of alternatives and therapies, and I agree with you, and we should still use those, because this isn't going to, the process we have right now, as mentioned by Senator Bernie Sanders, this is going to continue forever. And now you're going to have the added punishment of having to have a vaccine card showing that you've been immunized. Otherwise, you're going to be punished. Again, taking away your freedom of choice, taking away your religious freedom, and giving the government more power over everything you do. Because if you don't do that, well, then you won't get anything else. And by the way, you don't have a job because we already closed that job forever. So you need us to eat and to live. That's a problem. Roy mentions many of the channels that were removed from YouTube have found Rumble, DLive, and BitChute. I've heard about BitChute, which I'm looking into. Rumble, as I said, I'm going over to. And I advise, I am a content creator. We have to diversify because it's getting scary. LBRY, Library, is an alternative to YouTube and based on blockchain by a libertarian. Okay, that's interesting too. A few have moved over from YouTube already. Well, you got to remember, we've already heard from YouTube that the mere mention of a rewording of the words that there was an election irregularity, and if you say it in the other format, they will at some point come out of the blue and strike down every video and remove them, possibly removing the entire channel because you dared say something they don't like. I just showed you today that there was yesterday, as I was preparing for the show, the tweet existed. This morning, an hour before I'm ready for the show, that tweet was removed, which is why I didn't take a picture of it, because I had the tweet set for this, and it was just wiped out so that I can't talk to you about it. We're hearing people use a lot of fear and misinformation to push people. That's what 2021 is about. 2021 is a year that we lose so much faith and trust in our government around the world that we suddenly are susceptible to people using emotional manipulation to push us into places we may not want to be. Luna mentions that viruses mutate, and that is expected. It happens every year. That's absolutely true. We now have antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which may be scarier than CDC. The antibiotic-resistant bacteria is absolutely terrifying. That's something that's been around for about 5 years. I am terrified of that. The CDC did a whole report on it years back, and people die yearly from these super bugs. and they will continue. It's terrifying. Big tech has gone insane, Luna mentions. I've been dumping them. I hope most of us dump them completely so we won't feed these parasites. And the problem is that big tech is integral at this point. Now, I always believe that at some point there's going to be something bigger, better. I mean, there was MySpace and Facebook replaced MySpace. You're going to see something replace Twitter. There was, I forget the name of the program that was before YouTube, and now we got YouTube. There's going to be something else. But in the meantime, the power they have right now makes it almost impossible to find those technologies and to have them grow. And we have politicians like Senator Blumenthal, which we've mentioned on the show before, who, and at a congressional hearing, has stated that he wants to see more restrictions on free speech. He wants to see more censorship from YouTube and Twitter. We should be more concerned about this. This is what 2021 brings us. This is what I'm talking about here in the show today. Nashville is a big deal. It's a problem. And I think the biggest part of the problem isn't Nashville. It's not the bombing. It's in fact that we have lost our trust and faith in our government and our news media, as well we should. And we're losing our faith and confidence in organizations like Twitter and Facebook and Google, who are manipulating free speech for their advantage and to promote specific ideologies. I think that is very troubling. And that's what 2021 is about. And I don't think Biden has any clue about that. And I think that Kamala Harris is all for it. And I think that most people haven't even begun to consider that because we're distracted. Now, people can think I'm absolutely wrong and say, Mike, you just don't get it. But I think that is it. The global reset is about fear. COVID relief and the lockdowns are about fear. Nashville is about fear. Almost everything that's going on in our government right now is motivated and surrounded by fear. You should be afraid, and the government's going to take care of it. And the hand-picked, cherry-picked businesses that we have selected are going to take care of it. And you better not complain or else. And don't mind that you don't have as much freedom as you had 10 years ago or a generation ago. That is terrifying to me. That is 2021. And at some point, I expect that they're going to silence us for mentioning that very thing. Because if it weren't for the fear, you wouldn't have the domestic terrorism. If it weren't for the fear, you wouldn't have the censorship out of the internet overlords. If it weren't for the fear, people would be looking at Congress right now and telling them, do your job. Don't give us a pittance. Don't put us second. We have a comment. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed.
Hi, this is Brain Freeze. How are you? I have a question that you're going to... Hi. You're going to give a great answer. And I'd like... So my question is, how do you fight political burnout? I feel very defeated, and I'll tell you, not only because of the election results, and that just I completely turned off politically, and I sort of went into like a shell. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about in my personal life or anything like that, but just, feeling involved and excited about politics with Trump in office. And now, let's say I had a conversation with a friend. Mm-hmm. Okay, a liberal friend. And so here's the mentality. We were talking about ACB, in her opinion, mm-hmm. having been disgustingly rushed through. And the reason that it bothered her was because RBG left her wishes in a letter to her daughter that if she should be replaced, that she hopes that they will wait until the election, the new election, to replace her. And that Trump should have honored that. And by the way, she had to go because she was listening to CNN at that very moment, and they were talking about how Trump is going to declare martial law, and she is so disgusted with everything and him, and he's a criminal, and she can't wait for him to be out of office so they can prosecute him for their crimes.
Well,
okay, so now...
Well, wait a minute. You've thrown a lot out there. Let me try and...
I know, and I'm going to hang up after I'm done.
Well,
and
you don't have to. Go ahead.
Choose to talk about it or not. But what I think the point would be that people are so manipulable. Is that a word? Manipulable.
Close enough.
And I don't get it. And so she's been completely brainwashed. And I mean it in the truest sense of the word by CNN. So my question to you is, who have you influenced? And I bet you have influenced people. I'm not talking about your general public, but just your personal friends. I do have a classic long-term New York City liberal who became a Trump supporter and voted for him. That's the only person I've affected. Only one, but I'm proud of that. And that's because I do things that you do, or at least I try. You just tell the truth. You remove emotion from the equation, and you ask for facts, reason, and evidence. But how do you get through to people like this person who's brainwashed by CNN? So those are all of my myriad of points, and I just wanted to hear you talk about that a little bit if you had a chance.
Absolutely.
So thank you for everything that you do.
Absolutely, and thank you for calling in.
Okay, all the best to you. Bye-bye.
So, by the way, I'm going to take a half second here just to say we're like 5 people away from 500 subscribers. Please, if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe if you enjoy this in any way. But, and as you can see, I'm not kidding. Everyone can call in. It's 607-242-1582. We're always happy to have you call in, and we do pay attention to your comments. So Brain's put up a bunch of things there, and I want to try and address that. And again, it's the problem of fear. See, a lot of people look at the world's a big, scary place in a lot of ways. I mean, look at the Middle East, for example. Look at the atrocities in the Sudan that have been going on for 2 decades. You can point to lots of places in the world. There's terrible things. I'm not talking about like the 30 people who are alleged to have died by BLM, by police violence, which, by the way, is a bad thing, but is not the same thing as the absolute genocide that happened in the Sudan for over 2 decades, taking out about 1 million people at the last reported numbers, and we barely hear about that. It's not the same thing. Hang on, I got to switch my camera here because, of course, my camera died. And I have to fix my, where's my camera? Sorry about this. There it is. Okay. Technology's dying, so this is what happens when you're self-funded. Anyway, so we have a lot of people who are, they have to believe in what the media says. They have to believe in what the government is saying to us, because if they don't, well, what does that mean? How bad is the world if you can't believe them? And my thing is, you have to question them, and you have to say, I don't believe you. Prove it. Because we are seeing over and over again that's being abused. Someone wants to tell me, well, President Trump is going to go, and how do you know he's going to do anything? They say there's going to be martial law. That wasn't offered by him. That was by Flynn. And the very article in the New York Times that reported this, which we spoke about last week in our program, is it says there's no named source. There were 2 people who were briefed about the conversation that included former General Flynn and President Trump and a group of others, and that Flynn had mentioned it. That's not saying he's going to declare martial law. That's the headline to instill fear, to make people compliant. So everyone who believes in Orange Man bad and has been sold on Orange Man bad, and everyone who's heard Orange Man bad, they hear, oh, now he's going to do the militia. Well, if that's what you're thinking, if you already think he's supposed to be an evil person, now you're going to believe it. It makes sense if you're only going by what they've told you and you haven't actually read. And that was actually the declaration from the New York Times. In the first paragraph, they tell you that this is based on a conversation with two unnamed sources who were briefed on the conversation. Now, I really tell to people, you have to check, because the media is more than happy to lie. They benefit from the lie. They benefit from the growth of power of the government. They win. As Roy's mentioning, CNN equals propaganda machine. And we've seen this over and over again. We've seen the news media and the internet overlords shut down questions like, let's think about Hunter Biden. The laptop, it's not real. Don't believe it. It's not real. It's not true. A month later, oh, by the way, it's true. It's real. We knew that already, but they blocked and censored and punished people. Think of all the websites that were removed, all the Twitter accounts that were blasted and deleted because they said the truth. And Twitter didn't like it. CNN and MSNBC, they didn't like it because of a political motivation. And they weren't even honest enough to say it's because of our politics. We don't like it. So we're going to get rid of it because we don't like those politics. Because even if I don't agree with that, at least I understand it. It's not a great answer. It's not a good reason, but at least I know what it is. I know why they're doing it. So that leaves us with the problem. So what do we do about this? Because we're becoming apathetic. And we've seen this. It's been in our voting up until this year with Orange Man Bad and all the irregularities that went along with it. What did we see? Year after year after year, we've seen fewer and fewer people vote. And I believe going forward in 2021, 22, going on, you're going to see even less people vote because it's completely apathetic, because we do not trust our government. We do not trust the news media to pay attention to our government. We don't trust what's going on because people are lying to us, because they're saying things with unnamed sources and crazy comments and statements. And they expect you to just accept it and keep on going. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that apathy? And how do we help other people? Well, one, we do things like this. I'm just one voice out of many out there, and I hope to reach 500 people. And I know that from time to time we'll hit 30,000 on any video. We could have 1,000 people, 30,000 people watch it. We could have nobody watch it. It happens. But the point is that we go out and we do this. And I also go out and I make a point and I speak to, both as an individual and also as a member of the press, to my local politicians. I know every single one of my local politicians, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Conservative. I know them all. And I made a point of getting to know them over the last 12 years. And I speak with them on a regular basis. All of them, the Democrats as well as everyone else. And I actually have a pretty good relationship with most of them. Not with Antifa, not with BLM. They're not politicians. They're politicos. They're people who are trying to influence those politicians. But the greatest power of influence is among the people. And the more you know your politicians, the more that you can speak with them, the more that you can influence them as a person. Not just a member of the media, but as a person. And I speak with them often, and you've never heard any of those conversations because they're not about the news. They're about their conversation with me. And I do know that they watch these programs from time to time because they want to see what people are saying. They just don't want to get caught watching, because then they'll be accountable. But I do pay attention to it, and I do have these conversations with them. And you can be accountable that way. You can be influential that way. And that is why I always love to say, you are not alone. Many people agree with you. Many politicians agree with you. The thing is, they're afraid, because if you're not speaking up, they have no backup. They have no one to protect them from when their colleagues, when people like, Nancy Pelosi and the rest are saying, you're going to vote this way, X, Y, Z, or else. Well, no. I have all of my constituents standing behind me. That's one of the things you can absolutely do. And it's why Facebook and Twitter and other sources like that, that they cut off people and they deny us the ability to speak with each other so that you can't hit that critical mass and say, no, you can't just give us $600 and give away 10 million to Pakistan for some gender program that has no definition, instead of giving $845 million to the country of Jordan so that they can run their country. No, you can't just do that. Because we're going to vote you out because we have the ultimate power. And you should be spending that money on how many businesses can we save in my community? How many people can we keep from being kicked out in the streets because of evictions? And by the way, Governor Cuomo, you're not an emperor. You don't get to cause this problem in the first place. So there's a lot to that. And what it requires is that we don't stop speaking. It is the number one reason why, it is the reason why the First Amendment is first. Our speaking, our ability to assemble, whether it's electronically or in person, is vital to our nation being able to exist and to continue to exist. And people who want to have more power absolutely have to defeat that first. And they use fear and intimidation and violence and threat of violence to try and change that. And that's why we have to stand up to it. And that's why we have to ask people. I watch NBC. If you notice, most of the sources that I use aren't right wing. They're not from conservatives. They're almost always from the left, and as far left as I can find that is credible. People may not notice that, but there's a reason for that. Because what I'm talking about isn't necessarily partisan. What it is about here's the facts. Here's where I'm drawing the conclusions from. Here's the thing that we cannot dispute. This is when I talk about the New York Times last week, and you look at last week's video, you will see, live stream, you'll see. I show you the article from the New York Times and the very sentence where they say, this is based on two undisclosed sources who were filled in and told about the meeting that they weren't in. And that's how they got this whole thing about Trump and a militia. Does it mean it's untrue? Maybe, maybe not. But it means I have a question. And we need better homework done. If that's what Trump is planning to do, we need to know from a better source, and we need to know, is it legal? Is it something that he should do? Does the American people support him? Not whether or not the news media supports him, not whether or not this political faction supports him, but do the American people support him? And if they do, why? I know why the people who don't, and that's because Orange Man bad. That's not a reason, but that's their reason. That's an emotion, not a reason. So if I'm going to combat that, I have to understand, what am I combating? Am I combating some kind of wild goose chase? Or am I actually dealing with something that's credible and therefore requires time? Pick the battle you're going to fight. Brain Freeze mentions, Roy mentions that Brain Freeze is speaking the truth. And I agree. Brain Freeze mentions, I'm experiencing a 15-minute lag. 15 minutes? Wow, they really hate me today. But we cannot assume that there is actually a different strain and no more point. People must understand that COVID is not the Black Death. That is something I've been saying consistently, where you contract the illness and within 24 to 48 hours, you're in your grave. It's not the Black Death. It's never been the Black Death. It's been the fear has been the Black Death, but it has never been the Black Death. It's not even close. The original lockdown was a response to an unknown illness. Not entirely correct, because we did know things about it. And even with that, it wasn't the proper response, because we knew from the data we were getting, it was not a Black Death kind of event. It wasn't killing swaths of people. It was killing specific types of people. The original purpose was to flatten the curve. Yes, which takes 15 days. And here we are 9 months later, 12 months later. Now libertarians think that we must lock down to eradicate it, which is stupid. You can't eradicate an airborne disease by locking yourself in a house. That doesn't, you still breathe air. But, and I understand, and I apologize for people if this is being delayed, because again, this is part of why Facebook is blocking us. This is why it looks like Twitter is now, because we initially had a bunch of people watching on Twitter, and then suddenly they got wiped out. They disappeared. Either they hate what I have to say, or they are removed. And at the moment, I can't tell you which is the case. We need to ask questions. We need to have conversations. We need to challenge our government, and we need to keep our media honest. And it's absolutely important. Absolutely important. 2021 isn't about Nashville and the bombing. Whether it was because someone was upset about 5G, or whether they thought it was about China, or whether it is about China or some other government agency in the shadows, what we need is conversation. We need to regain our trust of our fellow Americans and of our government. And we only attain those things when we have faith in each other, when we have trust and belief. The biggest disease that's going on right now, the biggest virus that's out there right now, is that we don't have trust. And we don't have, how can I say, we don't have the Constitution backing us up right now. Or rather, we don't have people who believe that the Constitution is backing us up right now. And it is, and it does. And we lead the world because of it, when we realize it. And that means we need to speak and not be shut down, and not allow people to silence us and deny our First Amendment right, our Fourth Amendment right, our Second Amendment right, our 10th Amendment right. I can keep going down the list, and pretty much all of the rights can be identified, but these are things we need to speak about. And today got thrown off a little bit in the way I was trying to present that, but I hope that this is coming across and is being clear. And I do appreciate everyone who watches this, whether it's live or not, whether it's 5 people or 500 people or 500,000 people, because it doesn't matter. If and Brain Freeze, you asked, how do you influence people? When you speak, and even though you're not sure if people are listening. Like your friend you mentioned, who was talking with you, but also listening to NBC and saying, oh my God, it's so terrible. Well, that friend of yours is calling you to try, they're counting on you saying, well, did you read the article? Because it's not actually correct. That this is somewhat made up. They're exaggerating. And whether or not they immediately say, well, okay, I believe you, I understand, or whether they say, well, let me go check it out and find out, what they are going to say is, oh, maybe I shouldn't take this with 100% belief. Maybe I should have a grain of salt here. Maybe we need to ask another question. Maybe we need to make NBC, the mainstream media, make them work harder to give us more details, to be more precise, so that we can make better decisions. It's kind of like when I was talking about with Nashville, and I'm hearing videos where people are saying, oh, well, this is all about, It's not 5G. It's about this, what is it called? He called it the NERSA and the GERSA. Well, here's the bills. Look them up yourself. I'm putting it on the screen for you. The links will be in the description so that you can see it yourself. And I don't think it seems it wasn't what he wants it to be. It's a great conspiracy theory, but it doesn't make sense. Doesn't mean it's wrong. I don't know. But I know that the bills he's talking about don't convey the same fear or provide the same amount of power that he wants people to be emotionally attached to and say, well, oh my God, you have to react to this. It's kind of like what's going on in Lebanon, Tennessee right now. Oh my God, there's a truck. And as far as I can tell, and I'm checking the news on it, that while it was a question, it's not a, oh my God, you have to react. It's a, we need to understand. I don't know. It makes sense in my head, and I hope it comes across and makes sense to you. Because I'm looking at 2021, and I'm seeing a very, very scary year. I'm seeing a lot of people, I see a separation in our nation, a division that's growing and growing, and people who are using our divisions, these separations to pull us apart even more and more. And I see people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they're having a great time with this because this is what they want. This is their way to get socialism. But it doesn't mean it's good for America. It's not good for the American people. We're closer to a civil war, and many people think that we're in a cold civil war than ever before. And it's because we don't trust our government. And because we don't trust our government, we don't trust each other. Because some people absolutely will believe the government no matter what it says. That's like some people on the Titanic believed the ship would never sink, no matter what. There were people who were jumping off and they thought for sure they're going to get saved no matter what. And it didn't happen. Because just because you're sure doesn't mean it's right. And I say that about myself as well as anyone else. Roy mentions liberals work off emotions. When they start learning the truth, cognitive dissonance is painful to go through. Some will never make it through the process. Usually, I know. Hi, Poppy. It's good to see you. And Roy, yes, that's true. But that's why we have these conversations, because even those people, there are some people who will absolutely not listen. They believe their truth. They're like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when she said on 60 Minutes, she has her moral truth. Her personal truth is the truth, which is not scientific at all, which isn't a reason or an answer to anything at all. Her feelings don't justify anything except for, her personal decisions. But here's the thing. They have to hear us. When you speak with them and they have to, no, you're wrong, it's Orange Man, bad. No, you're wrong because America is just an evil place. White people are evil. Whenever they want to say these stupid things, they have to, they hear someone else come back and say, okay, I'm not upset. I'm not angry at you, but I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Here are facts. The amount of people who've been lifted out of poverty, the highest level of quality of life on the planet, the opportunity without restrictions from class for those who seek. These are just a couple of reasons why America is so great. The ability to speak without being fearful of being shot or killed or economically downtrodden, which happens in almost every other country on the planet to some degree or another. These are great things. And Poppy mentions people really need to open their eyes. Feelings don't matter. Use your brains. It's true, but feelings sell. You know, the old saying is sex sells, emotions sell. Oh God, they sell. They are the best way to sell. If you can make someone feel something, then you've sold them. And it doesn't matter about why. But the problem is that doesn't work for politics. That doesn't work for economics. It doesn't work for life. Just because you feel good doesn't mean that you're in a good position. Think about everybody on drugs. They feel great. Doesn't mean that this is a good thing for them. I know in the state of Oregon, they seem to disagree with that because they've just now made heroin legal. We can imagine how well that's going to go. But they will feel good. The people are going to feel good about using the drugs. They're going to feel good that they're giving people the opportunity to use the drugs. And the theory is because they're going to feel like they could do it, they won't, which is dumb. No, that's like saying, hey, you're an alcoholic. Why don't you go own a bar? Yeah, it works on TV as Cheers. It doesn't work in real life. That's not a smart strategy. I mean, are you going to say, hey, look, there's a pedophile. We should open a school or a daycare and have all the pedophiles run it? Because since they'll have the opportunity to do the crazy, insane things they want to do, well, they won't because they have the opportunity. And they'll feel better about themselves. I'm not sending my kids there. I wouldn't think you would send your kids there. It's a stupid idea. But it feels good. Bobby mentions that she agrees and stop giving away we have to stop giving away our rights. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, a lot of this, actually, when I think about it, a lot of this makes sense when you break it down and you really think about it. And you say, okay, so how many things can there's so many things that we can just tie it together and say, yeah, it's like the pedophile example I'm giving you. Hey, here's a great idea. Let's get all the pedophiles together, open up a daycare, send all the young kids there. If you wouldn't do that, why are you doing everything else? If the government says you have to do that, then you would say there's something wrong with that government. Because that government isn't thinking through the problem. They're not thinking about this. They're like, well, this will help them. What about all the people it's going to hurt? Oh, well, this will make them feel better. And it makes everyone else feel worse. Maybe not day one, but somewhere down the line when we start seeing the result and the consequences, then. And we see that whether we're looking at, when we look at the COVID relief as an example, which we started off with, when we look at the COVID relief, the government is telling us, oh, we're looking out for you, even though we're treating you second class. We have a second priority to giving money overseas. And we're not actually answering the problems that people have. The stimulus isn't reopening businesses. They're still closing. It's not stopping evictions. It's pushing it down the line. It's not giving people enough money to either open a new business or to pay off their debt so that they don't have to worry about the next 6 months. It's not doing any of that. It's just pushing the problem down the line. That means the government doesn't really care about you. And if the government doesn't care about me, why do I trust it? Why do I trust that they're going to do what's in my best interest? And thus, as a reaction to that, again, and I mentioned it before, but that's where we get things like Nashville, where people go and they say, well, if they have no faith in the government to take care of something, they're going to do it themselves. And they're going to do it in a way that may not be the best way to do things. Because let's assume that, yes, there's a Chinese company that is working with AT&T with the servers. Let's say that is the case. I don't know if it is or isn't. Let's say it is. Blowing up that doesn't necessarily stop China from doing what it's doing. It doesn't stop AT&T from doing what it's doing. It might lead to someone investigating that, but most likely not. maybe there's a better way to do this. And maybe that's talking with more people, letting people know about it, having a conversation, something like this, or other formats, writing letters, doing YouTube videos, maybe getting on Facebook. Use the mediums that we have available. Share this information with people. Get your evidence out there. Research it. Put it out there and say, here are the facts. And they line up like this. And so therefore, I think this must be true. We have China doing something that is bad. That gains more people than blowing up a building. Always. Always. Blowing up a building gets an emotion. Taking the time to do the research and presenting people with facts gets results. Positive results. Which is why we denounce violence, intimidation, and fear from any group and any individual. I don't care what their party affiliation is. I don't care what their reason is. I disagree with it. We denounce it. Luna mentions they would like that. They want to normalize pedophilia. Yes, they are trying to normalize pedophilia. They have non-profits for pedophiles to excuse their behavior. They have many of them, and they're trying to, and they have a bunch of doctors and scientists and LGBTQ that try and benefit and back them up. And I disagree with every single one of them. And you know what? I would never allow a child that I have influence over to go and be in that situation. No. At the same time, I wouldn't tell anyone blow up a building. Nor would I tell someone to lock themselves in a house because they're afraid of a cold. Not minimizing any of those things, but I am trying to give you an understanding of the reality of what we're dealing with. And the reality of what we're dealing with are very big issues that we're not stopping to think about. We're reacting emotionally. We're allowing people to lead us based on those emotions before we can get conclusions and understand what's really happening. I hope that's come across well today. We've been on for 2 hours and 7 minutes. I'm hoping that it has come across well. People have understood that. And, you know, if you have enjoyed this, please give it a like, give it a share, subscribe. You know, we need 5 people to get to 500 subscribers. I appreciate that. And it's not just because, oh, I want to get 500 subscribers. It's not about that. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I will continue to do this whether I have 5 million subscribers or I have 5, because I believe I have a passion for this, and I believe in the First Amendment right to speak with you. But it's because if we hit 500 people, then we can hit 5,000 people. We can hit 50,000. We can reach more people. It's the way the system, the algorithms are made. It's the way that people believe. The more subscribers you have, well, then I should listen to you. I should maybe listen to this video. That's the reality. So if you do enjoy this and you do agree with letting people speak, whether they agree or disagree, then give this a like, subscribe, share it. We would appreciate it. Final thoughts here. So Roy mentions anymore, I am always suspicious of a false flag first until proven otherwise. And I understand your reasoning. We should reasonably doubt our government, doubt our media until they're proven correct, because that's what the nation's built on. That's why we have the power. That's why we have the 10th Amendment. That's why we have the Declaration of Independence. We are the power. So we should always doubt anyone who says, give up your power because I know what's right. The government always thinks it's smarter than it is. Always. And the government is always wrong. And the government always says they have an answer for the problem, except they never answer the problem. They just kick it down the road. Every time. You doubt me? Ask them, what's their solution for the evictions? I understand, and I showed you. Bernie Sanders is saying, oh, well, it's a problem because we can't solve the evictions. Yeah, but changing the date from January 1st to February 1st doesn't fix the problem of evictions. Giving people a couple of checks doesn't solve the problem of evictions. The problem of evictions is because there's no jobs. And it's because people don't have faith in the government. So why bother? It's why people are leaving New York State in droves. I don't know. I hope it makes sense. I hope it's been clear. I hope I've been able to explain this. And I know we gained new breaking news and insight as the show was going on, but I hope you get it. And if by chance, if Biker for Life ever takes an opportunity to check this out, it's not that I was upset with what you said. It's the way you did it. It's the fact that you didn't have any facts. And you were trying to manipulate people based emotionally. And that isn't what this show does. But folks, I hope that in our new year, when we see you next video, it will be the new year. It will be 2021. And I want you to be surrounded by peace and love. I want you to be safe and happy. I want you to be prosperous, not just in 2021. I want you to start today, and I want you to keep getting it in 2021, and I want you to get it for your generation, your kids, your grandkids. I want you to have peace for your life, joy and happiness, or at the very least, the pursuit thereof. And in 2021, I hope we're going to have some answers for some of these things, some positive answers. That's what I'm looking forward to. But of course, I will have some videos out during the week, and we are live every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time talking with you, because we love hearing from you, because our First Amendment right is the most important right, and you are the most important people to share it with. I thank you all, and I want you to be well. I look forward to seeing you on next Sunday in 2021. Thank you.